Hey there, and welcome to part 2. If you want to watch part 1, here you go. Otherwise, let's get going. To recap, Ozai's plan in the finale is to use the power boost from Sozin's Comet to wipe out the Earth Kingdom. In the scene where Zuko tells Team Avatar about it, he flashes back and there makes the point that there's still resistance in the Earth Kingdom, even though they've taken Ba Sing Se, because the people of the Earth Kingdom still have hope. So Ozai figures he can use Sozin's Comet to annihilate everyone in the Earth Kingdom. Like you do. Okay, let's think about this for a second. First of all, when something comes low enough to push freaking clouds out of the way, it's hitting the freaking ground! Now, I suppose one could argue that I'm just nitpicking, but I haven't even gotten to the biggest problem yet. Do you remember where our heroes take off from right before the comet? It's just outside Ba Sing Se. Now, the old guy's job is to take back the city. Meanwhile, Sokka, Suki, and Toph have to travel to the Wulong Forest to intercept Ozai, while Zuko and Katara leave to confront Azula. Wait, that's how far it is?! Okay, the Earth is about 25,000 miles across, and this is a globe laid onto a flat map. Which means that Sokka, Suki, and Toph have to travel at least 7,000 or 8,000 miles. And that Zuko and Katara have to travel almost twice that. And they're not exactly flying the Enterprise either. Zuko and Katara are flying on Appa, and Toph, Suki, and Sokka are flying on whatever this thing is. Now, let's say each moves at around 30 miles an hour. God, this is starting to sound like a math homework assignment. Anyway, for Sokka, Suki, and Toph to travel, let's say, 7,000 miles, it would take them about 9 days. Not to mention the fact that it would take Zuko and Katara almost twice that. Yet, according to the show, they all set off on the day of the comet. So, yeah. Now, I don't want to break out the T-word, but, I mean... Oh, and by the way, we still haven't gotten to the worst problem yet. Remember how Ozai's plan was to use the power boost from the comet to burn down the Earth Kingdom? Well, he only gets the power boost while the comet's in the air, right? And his plan is to cross what tantamounts to Asia in order to burn the place down. Now, a flight from one end of Asia to another, let's say Istanbul to Tokyo, is about 12 hours. But that's in a jetliner which travels about 500 miles per hour. But Ozai's in a blimp! Now let's say this thing's traveling 50 miles per hour. That's 120 hours, or 5 days. But, don't forget, he's not trying to get from point A to point B. He's trying to burn down the whole continent, which means he has to zigzag across the whole thing. Suddenly, a 5-day trip just became several weeks. Now allow me to illustrate my point further. If Ozai's attack didn't start till right before the duel, and Sozin's Comet exits the atmosphere almost immediately after, that means that for however long these two were fighting, Ozai would have only had about that amount of time to be blazing. Now, again, let's say these blimps are moving at about 50 miles per hour, that this trail of destruction is a mile across, and that Aang and Ozai were fighting for about 3 hours. That means that if Ozai hadn't been interrupted, traveling at 50 miles per hour for 3 hours, he would have only gotten 150 miles into the Earth Kingdom. Here's a map to illustrate my point. Yeah. Now, I can already hear the counter-arguments. Well, maybe the plan was to let the comet's power boost help the fire spread. Or maybe he had a whole bunch of fleets. Okay, first of all, there is no indication that he had any other fleets. Not to mention the fact it'd be impossible to build them given the time that the Fire Nation had. The only way this makes sense is if they started building them at the beginning of the war. But they've only had the tech since episode 117! But what about Sozin's Comet? Wouldn't that help the fire spread? No. The comet gives a power boost to fire benders. It doesn't make fire more... fiery. Think of it this way. The full moon gives a power boost to water benders. It doesn't make water more... watery. So, it's just regular fire. And when the hell is the last time you ever heard of a fire spreading across an entire continent? I'd also like to point out the double standard going on here, that only some in the fanbase have. Remember that giant mecha that Kuvira had at the end of Book 4? Well, imagine if she was all like, okay, here's the plan. I'm gonna use this thing to wipe out the entire Earth Kingdom. Okay. And I'm gonna do it all in one day! What? I mean, could you imagine the backlash this would get from people? What's this? She's going to use that thing to annihilate the entire Earth Kingdom. Preposterous! It's at this point, I'm guessing, a lot of people are wondering, well then, my good sir, what would you have done instead, my good sir? Well, not only will I provide my own epic finale, it is one that I believe would be even better. In the next video, haha! No, seriously, you're gonna have to wait until next time. Now, I just want to reiterate, Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite show. It is a masterpiece, but even masterpieces are allowed to have mistakes, even big ones. Also, I can already feel people defending this mistake in the comments. So I ask, again, would you defend Legend of Korra like this? Now, I feel like some people are going to reply, well, Korra was an inferior show due to its many mistakes, therefore, it does not warrant a defense. And to that, I have this to say. If you missed the massive mistakes I talked about in this video, What else have you missed? So, I'm not sure when I'll get the next video up. Editing is still pretty new to me. Also, I will address the critiques against Legend of Korra eventually. But first, I want to talk about all the problems with Fast Airbender and just give, as I said, perspective. But I'll try to keep everyone up to date. Finally, I ask that you do not subscribe, share, or like this video, and that you do not follow me on Twitter with this link. Because I don't need your pity!